She was just a logistics tech on the carrier deck. Could she hide a secret that could save lives? Stay behind the red line, they told her, like she was some rookie who couldn't tell a wrench from a screwdriver. When the jet engine went into critical failure, the deck crew scrambled. The pilot had seconds before needing to eject. That's when she broke the rule, crossed the line, called out an override protocol only 3 people in the world knew. The deck chief turned, fury in his eyes, until he saw how she moved. Recognition dawned on his face. Shadow Vector, he whispered, a name that hadn't been spoken in 10 years. A unit that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story and want to see what happens next, subscribe to our channel for weekly military thrillers that reveal the untold stories behind the uniforms. The USS Valiant sliced through Pacific waters, a floating fortress of steel and purpose. Deep within the carrier's cramped logistics hub, Lieutenant Junior Grade Talia Merrick worked methodically through inventory manifests, her movements precise and economical. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across stacks of requisition forms and supply catalogs. Her fellow officers had nicknamed her Ghost because she materialized exactly when needed and vanished just as quickly, leaving minimal impression. 6 months on this carrier and most people still did a double take when they saw her name tag. She preferred it that way. Talia's morning routine never varied. Up at 0500, 30 minutes of careful exercise designed to maintain fitness without building noticeable muscle definition. 15 minutes to style her hair in a way that concealed the small scar near her temple. The way she carried herself, shoulders slightly rounded, eyes cast down when superior officers passed, was a studied performance. She'd spent years perfecting the art of being forgettable. Will her true skills finally emerge? Commander Decker appeared in the doorway of the logistics hub, his bulky frame blocking the light from the corridor. He beckoned her with impatient fingers. Merrick, needs updated meteorological data delivered to flight deck operations before the next launch window. His instructions carried the condescension reserved for those deemed inconsequential. Stay behind the red line. Do not distract the flight crew. Drop off the data and return immediately. We clear. Yes, sir. Talia responded, her voice calibrated to be forgettable. Decker sighed. And for God's sake, try to be a little less invisible. You're like a damn shadow around here. Never seen an officer try so hard not to be noticed. If he only knew how much effort that took. Talia collected the sealed data packet and made her way toward the carrier's island structure. The massive flight deck stretched before her like an asphalt plain. Flight crews bustled about preparing for the afternoon's operations. As she approached the red line, the painted boundary separated authorized flight deck personnel from everyone else. Snippets of conversation drifted toward her. Another logistics girl, one deck technician said to another, probably thinks a torque wrench is some kind of dance move. Keep her behind the line, his companion responded. Last thing we need is a desk jockey underfoot during hot ops. Talia absorbed it silently, eyes down, shoulders slightly hunched. The perfect picture of difference, but something flickered behind her eyes when she glanced at the FA-18 Super Hornets being prepped for launch. A momentary recognition quickly suppressed. She'd been that pilot once, a lifetime ago. The carrier deck was organized chaos, the most dangerous workplace on Earth, where a moment's inattention could mean death. Jet engines screamed, chains rattled, and hand signals flew as crew members communicated over the deafening noise. Talia stood precisely at the red line, waiting for someone to notice her and take the data packet. Her gaze drifted to a particular aircraft where Captain Rasmus Vega, the carrier's most decorated pilot, readied for launch. Something about his confident movements caused her to pause a beat longer than necessary. Perhaps it was the way he performed his pre-flight check, methodical yet fluid, like a dancer who knew every step by heart. Or perhaps it was because he reminded her of Keelani. They'd flown together in the program before Damascus, before everything went wrong. Then Enan finally approached, extending his hand for the packet. I'll take that, Lieutenant. Talia nodded, about to hand it over, when chaos erupted across the deck. Warning lights flashed red across the flight line. Alarms blared. Vega's aircraft, already powered up for systems check, began a dangerous hot start. The engine overheated rapidly, threatening catastrophic failure. Primary systems failure, someone shouted. The deck chief, Lieutenant Commander Orion Blackwood, rushed toward the aircraft, barking urgent orders. Get emergency coolant online. Move, move, move. Primary coolant not responding, a technician shouted over the rising whine of the engine. Secondary systems offline, another called. Talia stood frozen. The data packet forgotten in her hand. This wasn't supposed to happen. The FA-18's redundant systems should have prevented this cascade failure. Unless her mind raced through possibilities, calculations, procedures. 8 years as a test pilot before Shadow Vector. 3 more years flying the most classified missions in American military history. She knew exactly what was happening. Captain Vega needs to eject now. Blackwood bellowed. Clear the deck for emergency protocols. Talia took a half step forward, then caught herself. Her carefully constructed identity was at stake. Lieutenant Junior Grade Merrick, forgettable logistics officer, would have no idea how to handle this situation. But Major Althea Rodas of Shadow Vector would. The aircraft's engine pitch rose to a dangerous whine seconds before catastrophic failure. We see brief fragmented flashes, snippets of memory, a different flight deck, night operations, someone shouting, vector formation, the smell of burning fuel, screams over the radio. Decision made. Talia crossed the red line. A deck crewman spotted her immediately. Hey, you get back behind the line. She ignored him, striding purposefully toward the emergency console. Her posture had changed. Gone was the hunched, diminutive logistics officer. Each step now betrayed years of flight deck operations. Her voice cut through the chaos with a command none of them recognized. Override protocol. Cerberus 7. Immediate coolant flush. Secondary circuit. Everyone froze. The technical jargon was beyond anything a logistics officer should know, beyond what most aviation technicians would know. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood whirled around, fury etched into his weathered face. Who the hell gave you authorization to? The words died in his throat as he saw how she moved. Her fingers flew across the emergency panel with practiced precision, entering a complex sequence of commands. Bypass the thermal relay, she ordered a nearby technician who stood paralyzed in shock. Route through tertiary systems, then hard reset on my mark. No one moved. That's an order. Her voice carried a tone of irrefutable command that seemed impossible coming from a junior lieutenant. Something in that voice, the absolute certainty, the chain of command presence that couldn't be faked, made the technician leap into action. Bypassing the thermal relay, he confirmed, hands moving to the appropriate controls. Routing through tertiary. Talia watched the diagnostic screen, eyes narrowed. On my mark, now. The system reset. The dangerous whine of the engine subsided. Temperature gauges that had been climbing into the red zone began dropping steadily. Captain Vega was saved. The aircraft was saved. In the sudden silence that followed, Talia became aware of dozens of eyes fixed on her. She'd blown her cover completely. 5 years of careful anonymity destroyed in 30 seconds of crisis. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood approached slowly, his expression transformed from anger to something like awe mixed with weariness. Only 3 people in the world know that override protocol, he said quietly. One's dead, one's in the Pentagon, and one. He noticed something on her wrist as her sleeve rode up. A small faded tattoo partly concealed by her watch. A geometric pattern of lines forming what looked like a modified vector symbol with a shadow cast beneath it. His eyes widened in recognition. Shadow Vector, he whispered. They told us you were all gone. The deck fell silent. Several senior officers exchanged knowing looks. Captain Vega, who had emerged from his aircraft, stared at Talia with dawning recognition. Major Althea Rodas, he said, using a name she hadn't heard in a decade. I flew you into Damascus that night, the night they said you never came back. Alpha straightened to her full height, no longer hiding behind Talia's carefully constructed persona. "Hello, Vega," she said quietly. "It's been a while." The deck crew stared in confusion, looking between their respected pilot and the woman they had dismissed as just another logistics officer. "Security detail to the flight deck on the double," Blackwood ordered into his comm unit. "That's not necessary," Alpha said, her voice calm. "With all due respect, ma'am," Blackwood replied, "if you're who I think you are, then your presence on this carrier raises about 50 different security questions I'm not qualified to address." "Fair enough." Captain Vega hadn't moved, still staring at her like he'd seen a ghost. In many ways, he had. "They told us your helicopter went down over the Mediterranean. All hands lost." "The helicopter did go down," Alpha said. "After we were extracted, someone made sure of that." "Admiral's quarters now," Vega said, the authority of rank returning to his voice. "We need to sort this out away from the deck." Alpha nodded, allowing herself to be escorted by the security detail that arrived moments later. As they led her across the deck, she caught whispers from the crew. "Shadow Vector, what's that?" "Black Ops, the blackest. They say they could infiltrate anywhere, fly anything." "I thought that was just a myth." "Look at her face. Does that look like a myth to you?" Admiral Ree Harrington was not a man accustomed to surprises. 30 years in the Navy had taught him to prepare for every contingency. Yet, the woman standing at attention before his desk represented something he hadn't prepared for. A ghost from one of the most classified chapters in recent military history. "At ease, Major," he said, testing the rank. "If that's really who you are." "Thank you, sir." Alpha adopted a parade rest stance, but maintained perfect posture. The transformation from the hunched logistics officer was complete. "I understand you have questions." "Questions?" Admiral Harrington gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's putting it mildly. I have a junior logistics officer on my carrier who apparently knows classified engine protocols and claims to be part of a special operations unit that officially never existed." Captain Vega stood by the window, arms crossed. "It's her, Admiral. I never forgot that face. I flew her team into a blacked-out LZ outside Damascus in 2015. Highest classification level I've ever operated under." "And you're certain?" "Absolutely, sir." Major Althea Rodas, Shadow Vector operational team leader, though I was told she and her entire unit were killed during extraction. The Admiral's gaze returned to Alpha. "Let's start with the basics, shall we? Why are you on my carrier masquerading as Lieutenant Talia Merrick?" "Hiding in plain sight, sir. It's what we were trained to do." "Are there others?" Alpha hesitated, the first crack in her composure. "I don't know for certain. We scattered after Damascus. The protocol was to establish deep cover identities and remain separate unless activated." "Activated by whom?" "Your unit was officially listed as killed in action." "Officially?" "Yes, that was the problem." Alpha's eyes hardened. Someone very high up in the chain of command wanted Shadow Vector eliminated. Not disbanded, eliminated. When your own government tries to kill you, you learn to trust carefully. The Admiral leaned back, absorbing this. "Those are serious allegations, Major." "With respect, sir. I watched 6 of my team members die when our extraction helicopter exploded after we transferred to the secondary transport. That wasn't an accident." Captain Vega stepped forward. "I remember the mission parameters. Complete communications blackout. No flight plan filed. I was ordered to forget I ever made that flight because someone needed plausible deniability." Alpha said, "Shadow Vector uncovered something in Damascus. Something that implicated American officials in arms sales to hostile regimes. We had proof. Names, banking transactions, the whole operation. And this proof scattered with the survivors, sir." "Insurance policies." The Admiral studied her for a long moment. "You realize I'll need to verify your identity through proper channels." "Of course, sir. My fingerprints and DNA will match Major Althea Rhodes in the classified personnel database, assuming those records haven't been altered. Why reveal yourself now? You maintained this cover for how long? 5 years on this carrier, sir. Before that, other posts, always in logistics or support roles, places where I could remain unnoticed but still serve. She straightened her shoulders. I revealed myself because Captain Vega would have died otherwise. Some choices are simple, even when the consequences are not. The Admiral nodded slowly. I'll make some calls. In the meantime, you're restricted to quarters under guard. Not as a prisoner, Major, but for your protection. If what you're saying is true, your cover is now blown. I understand, sir. As she turned to leave, Captain Vega spoke. One more thing, Rhodes. That overrides protocol. How did you know it would work? That system wasn't even in development when Shadow Vector was operational. For the first time, a hint of a smile crossed Althea's face. We made it our business to know things we weren't supposed to know, Captain. It's what kept us alive. The security detail escorted her out, leaving Admiral Harrington and Captain Vega alone. What do you think? The Admiral asked. Vega shook his head in wonder. Shadow Vector was legendary, sir. The best pilots, the best tacticians, the best infiltration specialists, all in one unit. If she's really Major Rhodes, and if what she's saying about being targeted is true, then we have a serious problem. The Admiral finished. Get me a secure line to Naval Intelligence in Vega. Not a word of this to anyone. If she's right about how high this goes, we don't know who we can trust. The secure conference room aboard USS Valiant was silent, save for the low hum of air conditioning. Alpha sat at the table, hands folded before her as Admiral Harrington studied a tablet containing the verification results. Captain Vega leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood stood by the door, still processing the revelation from the flight deck. Well, the Admiral said finally, Naval Intelligence confirms your identity. DNA and fingerprint match for Major Althea Rhodes. He set the tablet down. Officially listed as killed in action 10 years ago along with the rest of Shadow Vector. Not all of us died that night, sir, Althea said. So you've claimed. The question is, why would someone within our own command structure want to eliminate an entire special operations unit? Alpha leaned forward slightly. Because of what we found in Damascus, sir, evidence of weapons sales to enemy combatants, American-made weapons flowing through unofficial channels, facilitated by people with high-level military clearance. Captain Vega pushed off from the wall. I remember that night. I was told it was a standard extraction. No details provided, just coordinates and a time window. That's because the mission was compartmentalized, Althea explained. Even within Shadow Vector, only 3 of us knew the full scope. We were tracking arms dealers in Syria when we discovered the American connection. You're saying American officials were selling weapons to our enemies? Blackwood's voice held disbelief. Not directly. A network of shell companies, offshore accounts, cutouts, but the trail led back to specific individuals within the Pentagon and intelligence community. The Admiral's expression remained neutral, but his fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the table. That's an extraordinary claim, Major, one that would require extraordinary proof. I agree, sir. Which is why we secured the evidence before extraction. The data was split among the survivors. Insurance policies, as I mentioned. How many survivors? Captain Vega asked. Alpha hesitated. 4 of us made it out. Myself, Lieutenant Zira, Captain Tavern Winters, and Commander Finch Hawthorne. We followed protocol, scattered, assumed new identities, no contact. Until now, the Admiral said, I never intended to reveal myself, Alpha admitted. But I couldn't let Captain Vega die. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. If what you're saying is true, coming forward has put you in considerable danger. The people who tried to eliminate Shadow Vector once won't hesitate to try again. I'm aware of the risk, sir. Tell me about this evidence. What form does it take? Digital records primarily, banking transactions, communication logs, meeting transcripts. Each of us has a piece of the puzzle encrypted with keys only we possess. A knock at the door interrupted them and even entered, handing the Admiral a secure communications device. "Excuse me," Harrington said, stepping out of the room. When the door closed, Captain Vega moved closer. "Damascus," he said quietly. "That night has haunted me for 10 years. They told me failure caused the crash, that no one survived. They lied," Althea said simply. "We transferred to a secondary extraction vehicle. Minutes later, our original helicopter exploded midair, too clean to be an accident." "How did you know about the engine override protocol today?" "That system was implemented 3 years after your supposed death." A hint of pride flashed in Althea's eyes. "Shadow Vector wasn't just an operational team, Captain. We were also involved in R&D. We developed many of the systems currently in use under different project names. The Cerberus protocols were my design." Blackwood whistled low. "So that's why the deck crew couldn't fix it. They didn't know they were working with a prototype system. Not exactly a prototype anymore. But yes, the override exists specifically for the cascade failure scenario we saw today." Alpha paused. "Though that type of failure shouldn't happen at all. The redundancies are extensive." "Are you suggesting sabotage?" Vega asked sharply. Althea met his gaze. "I'm suggesting that coincidences make me nervous, especially when they happen immediately after I deliver meteorological data to the flight deck." Vega and Blackwood exchanged concerned looks as the Admiral re-entered the room. His expression had hardened considerably. "That was naval intelligence," he said, his voice clipped. "They're sending a team to take custody of Major Rhodes, arriving by helicopter within the hour." "Sir?" Blackwood questioned. "Apparently, this situation has been classified at the highest levels. Orders come directly from the Joint Chiefs." Alpha's posture changed subtly. "Which member of the Joint Chiefs specifically?" "Admiral Garrison." She closed her eyes briefly. "Sir, request permission to speak freely." "Granted." Admiral Garrison was one of the names in our Damascus files. The room went still. Admiral Harrington's face remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed fractionally. "That's a serious accusation against a superior officer, Major." "I'm aware, sir, but I would strongly advise against turning me over to any team sent by Garrison." Captain Vega stepped forward. "Sir, if there's even a possibility she's right." "I understand the implications, Captain." The Admiral's voice was sharp. He turned back to Alpha. "You said 4 of you survived. Do you have any way to contact the others?" "Not directly, but there are protocols, emergency signals we established. If they're monitoring the channels, they'll know I've been compromised." "So, they might come looking for you," Blackwood said. "Or they might go deeper underground," Althea countered. Self-preservation was always part of the protocol. Admiral Harrington made a decision. "Lieutenant Commander Blackwood escorted Major Rhodes to my private quarters. Captain Vega, you're with me. We'll meet the Naval Intelligence team when they arrive." "Sir," Althea interjected, "if I may suggest an alternative." "That wasn't a request, Major. It was an order." The Admiral's tone left no room for argument. As Blackwood led Althea through the carrier's corridors, he kept his voice low. "The Admiral's quarters have a secure access point and a private exit route, not standard design." Alpha caught his meaning immediately. The Admiral was giving her an option to evade the incoming team if necessary. "Thank you for the information, Lieutenant Commander. After what you did on the deck today, saving one of our pilots, it's the least I can do." He paused outside the Admiral's quarters, keying in the access code. "Is it true about Shadow Vector?" "Which part?" "That you could fly anything, infiltrate anywhere?" "The deck crew has been swapping stories since you left. Half of them think you're some kind of super soldier." Alpha almost smiled. "We were just well-trained specialists, Commander. Nothing more." "Right," he said skeptically, opening the door. Just specialists who happen to know classified override protocols and can spot engine sabotage from across a carrier deck. Inside the Admiral's quarters, Alpha immediately noted the emergency escape route disguised as a maintenance access panel. Standard military design with non-standard applications, typical of flag officer accommodations. "I'll be outside if you need anything," Blackwood said, closing the door behind him. Alone, Alpha moved to the window overlooking the flight deck. The carrier continued its operations, oblivious to the drama unfolding in its command structure. She watched as flight crews prepared the next rotation of aircraft, their movements precise and practiced. Her mind raced through contingencies. If Admiral Garrison was indeed sending a team, their orders would not involve polite questioning. 10 years ago, someone had tried to eliminate all evidence of what Shadow Vector had discovered. That someone would not hesitate to tie up loose ends. Now the intercom buzzed. "Helicopter approaching." 2 minutes out came Blackwood's voice. "Admiral Harrington requests your presence on Secure Channel 3. Alpha moved to the communications console and entered her old encryption key. To her surprise, it was still valid. Admiral Harrington's face appeared on the screen. "Major, I've spoken with the incoming team's leader. Something doesn't add up. They're refusing to provide standard authentication codes. Because they're not naval intelligence," Alpha said. "At least not officially. My conclusion as well." The Admiral's expression was grim. "I'm delaying their landing with mechanical issues on the flight deck, but that won't hold them for long. Captain Vega has some concerns about your story." However, the camera panned to include Vega. "If what you're saying is true, where's your proof? Why wait 10 years to come forward?" "The proof is divided among the survivors, as I said, and we didn't come forward because we watched 6 of our teammates die when they tried to report what we found. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator, Captain." "And your sudden appearance on my carrier," the Admiral pressed. "Just a coincidence?" "No, sir. I've been tracking movement in Garrison's special operations budget for years. 3 months ago, unusual activity suggested they might be reactivating certain dormant protocols. I requested transfer to the Valiant because intelligence suggested you might be a target." "Me?" The Admiral looked genuinely surprised. "Your upcoming promotion would put you in position to access the same files we found in Damascus. I believe they're cleaning the house before that happens." Vega leaned closer to the camera. "The engine failure today. You suggested sabotage." "Not suggestion, certainty. The Cerberus system doesn't fail like that naturally. Someone triggered a manual override, then disabled the safety protocols. They wanted it to look like catastrophic failure. A convenient way to eliminate a decorated pilot who flew Shadow Vector's last mission," the Admiral said slowly, "along with anyone else who might remember details." "Exactly, sir." The Admiral made a decision. "Major, I can't officially sanction what I'm about to suggest, but the maintenance access in my quarters leads to Auxiliary Hangar Bay 3. Captain Vega will meet you there with appropriate credentials and a flight plan." "Sir, with respect, putting the captain at risk." "Is it my decision to make?" Vega interrupted. "Besides, I'm the one who flew you into this mess 10 years ago. Seems fitting I fly you out now." "What about the incoming helicopter?" she asked. "Let me worry about our visitors," Admiral Harrington said. "I've already alerted trusted security personnel. We'll ensure they're properly welcomed and thoroughly delayed." "Time to disappear again," Major Vega added. But this time, not alone. The communication ended. Alpha moved swiftly to the maintenance access panel, removing it to reveal a narrow passage. As she slipped inside, replacing the panel behind her, she allowed herself a moment of recognition. After 10 years of isolation of building walls and maintaining cover, she was back in the field, operating with a team, however small. It felt like coming home. The auxiliary maintenance corridors were dimly lit and rarely used, perfect for covert movement through the carrier. Alpha navigated them with practiced ease, her mind mapping the vessel's layout. Shadow vector training included memorizing the schematics of every major naval vessel. Details that had once seemed like excessive preparation now proved vital. She reached Auxiliary Hangar Bay 3 and waited in the shadows, watching as a lone figure entered. Captain Vega, now dressed in standard flight gear rather than his formal uniform, carried an extra flight suit and helmet. "Major," he said, spotting her immediately despite the dim lighting. "Time to move. Our visitors have been temporarily detained for security verification, but that won't hold them long. What's our exit strategy?" Supply ran to the USS Kimball. Routine transfer flight already on the books. By the time anyone realizes we've deviated from the flight plan, we'll be long gone. And after that, Vega handed her the flight suit. "We find the rest of your team, assuming they're still alive." "They're alive," Althea said with certainty as she quickly donned the flight suit. "Tavon, Zira, Finch, they're the best at staying hidden." "Then how do we find them?" "We don't. They find us." Alpha secured the last zipper on the flight suit. "After today, they'll know I've been compromised." Shadow Vector had contingency plans for this exact scenario. "And those plans are, first we get off this carrier, then I'll explain everything." As they prepared the helicopter for launch, Althea felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with operational deployment. For 10 years, she'd suppressed this part of herself, the tactician, the pilot, the operator. Now, like a muscle memory awakening, she moved with fluid precision through the pre-flight checks. "You haven't lost your touch," Vega observed. "Some things you don't forget," she replied. "No matter how long you pretend to be someone else, the hangar bay doors open to reveal the vast ocean beyond." As their helicopter lifted off from the USS Valiant's auxiliary deck, Alpha caught a glimpse of another helicopter circling the main landing area, the Naval Intelligence Team, still waiting for clearance. "Where to?" Vega asked as they cleared the carrier's airspace. Alpha punched coordinates into the navigation system, a place Shadow Vector established years ago. "Off the grid, untraceable. If the others are looking for me, that's where they'll send the signal. And if they're not looking," she meets his gaze steadily, "then we're on our own against some very powerful people who want us dead. Either way, Captain, I hope you're ready for what comes next." "After 10 years of wondering what really happened that night in Damascus, I'm ready for the truth," Vega assured her. "Whatever it costs." As the helicopter banked away from the carrier, heading toward the distant coastline, Althea felt something she hadn't experienced in a decade. Purpose. The mission she'd thought ended in betrayal and death was suddenly active again. And this time, she wouldn't be silenced. The coastal safe house sat perched on a remote cliff, its weathered exterior blending perfectly with the rugged landscape. Inside, however, the structure hummed with advanced technology and security systems. Alpha moved through the space with familiar ease, activating systems that had lain dormant for years. "How long has this place been here?" Vega asked, taking in the sophisticated equipment that contradicted the cabin's rustic appearance. "Since before Shadow Vector officially existed," Althea replied, powering up a secure communications array. The program had contingencies within contingencies. This safe house was known only to team leaders. "And you think the others will know to look for you here?" "Not directly, but there's a protocol." She finished the startup sequence and entered a complex encryption key. Every member of Shadow Vector was implanted with a specialized tracking chip, inactive unless specifically triggered. Medical records listed them as cardiac monitors. "You've been walking around with a tracking device for 10 years. Vega sounded incredulous. "An inactive one. The chips were designed to activate only under specific circumstances using a frequency that isn't monitored by standard military channels." Alpha pressed her palm against a biometric scanner. "I'm activating mine now. If the others are alive, they'll detect the signal." The system hummed to life, displaying a geographical interface of the surrounding 100 miles. A single blinking dot represented Alpha's position. "Now we wait," she said. "For how long?" "Depends on how deep they're hiding." Alpha moved to a cabinet, removing MREs and water bottles. "Hungry?" Vega accepted the offered rations with a wry smile. Military cuisine. Some things never change. They ate in companionable silence. The gravity of their situation temporarily set aside. When they finished, Vega leaned forward. "Tell me about Damascus," he said quietly. "I delivered your team and left immediately. 2 days later, I was told everyone died during extraction." Alpha's expression darkened. The mission was straightforward initially. Intelligence pointed to a meeting of arms dealers in Damascus, supplying weapons to multiple factions in the Syrian conflict. Our job was to identify the suppliers and their distribution network. Standard counterterrorism operation. That's what we thought. Alpha's voice hardened. But when we infiltrated their systems, we found something unexpected. American weapons diverted from official channels. Serial numbers that trace back to Pentagon inventories and financial transactions, linking it all to high-ranking officials in military intelligence, including Admiral Garrison. He was just one name among several. The operation was sophisticated. Weapons reported as destroyed during transport were actually diverted to private sellers who moved them through shell companies to conflict zones worldwide. Billions in profit, all carefully laundered through offshore accounts. And you had proof, comprehensive evidence, financial records, communications, meeting transcripts, everything needed to expose the entire network. Alpha's expression turned haunted. We followed protocol, reported our findings through secure channels. Then everything went wrong. The helicopter explosion, she nodded. We split the evidence 4 ways before extraction. Insurance in case anything happened. Good thing we did. The monitoring system suddenly beeped. A second blip had appeared on the map, moving rapidly toward their location. "Looks like someone got your message," Vega observed. Alpha studied the approach vector. Estimated arrival in 20 minutes. Could be one of ours. Or it could be someone who hijacked your signal. That's why we have verification protocols. Alpha moved to a weapons locker, entering another code, and contingencies for unwelcome visitors. She removed 2 tactical sidearms, checking each carefully before offering one to Vega. He accepted it with the practiced ease of someone familiar with firearms. "I hope we don't need these," he said. "So do I. But hope isn't a strategy." They positioned themselves with clear sightlines to all approaches. The minutes ticked by intense silence until the distant sound of an approaching helicopter broke the stillness. Single aircraft, civilian model. Vega reported from his observation point. Landing on the eastern approach. Standard procedure. Alpha confirmed. Hold position until visual confirmation. The helicopter touched down on a small cleared area 200 yards from the safe house. Its rotors slowed but didn't stop completely, ready for immediate departure if necessary. A lone figure emerged, moving with deliberate caution toward the structure. Alpha studied the approaching figure through binoculars. Female, 5 feet 9 inches, military bearing. "One of yours?" Vega asked. A smile broke across Althea's face. "Lieutenant Ziranoir, Shadow Vector's infiltration specialist." Alpha stepped onto the porch, keeping her sidearm concealed but ready. The approaching woman stopped 30 yards out, hands clearly visible. "Verification protocol," Alpha called. The Damascus weather report indicated clear skies, came the response. With moderate turbulence over the extraction point, Alpha completed the code phrase. The woman's posture relaxed marginally. 10 years and you still remember the protocols. "Good to see you, Major." "Likewise, Lieutenant Zira." Anur approached the safe house with measured steps. She was lean and athletic, her dark hair cropped short, her movements displaying the same controlled precision that Alpha had shown on the carrier deck. When she reached the porch, the 2 women embraced briefly but fiercely. "I thought I might be the only one left," Zira said. "I've been thinking the same for years." They moved inside where Vega waited. Zira assessed him with professional scrutiny. "Captain Vega," she said with recognition. "You flew us into Damascus." "And apparently out again, though I was told otherwise," he replied. They lied to a lot of people. Zira turned to Alpha. Your signal activation was unexpected. What changed? Quickly, Alpha brought Zira up to speed. Her cover on the Valiant, the engine sabotage incident, and their narrow escape from Garrison's team. They're cleaning the house, Zira concluded. I've been monitoring chatter on certain channels. Unusual movement in black budget allocations, personnel changes in key positions. Any contact with Winters or Hawthorne? Alpha asked. Nothing direct, but Tavon left a marker in an old drop 6 months ago. He's still operational. Zira hesitated. Finch is another matter. His signal went dark 3 years back. Could mean anything. Or it could mean they found him, Vega suggested grimly. If they did, they wouldn't have recovered his data, Alpha said with certainty. Finch was too careful. Zira moved to the communications array. My equipment detected unusual naval deployments near your carrier's last position. They're not being subtle anymore. Because they don't need to be, Althea realized. With my cover blown, they know we'll be gathering. It's their best chance to eliminate all remaining evidence at once. Then why are we sitting in a known safe house? Vega asked. Because we need to consolidate our evidence before they find us, Althea explained. Each of us has a piece of the puzzle. Together, we have enough to expose the entire operation. And then what? Zira asked. The same people who tried to kill us 10 years ago are still in power. Some have even been promoted. Not all of them, Vega interjected. Admiral Harrington isn't part of this conspiracy. He risked his career helping us escape. One admiral against a network that spans multiple branches and agencies, Zira countered skeptically. Sometimes one person in the right position is all you need, Althea said, especially when armed with irrefutable evidence. A new alert sounded from the monitoring system. Another signal had been activated. This one moving fast along the coastline. Tavon Zira confirmed after checking the signature. He must have detected my signal responding to yours. How long? Alpha asked. 2 hours, maybe less. Vega had moved to the window, scanning the horizon. We might not have 2 hours. Vehicle approaching from the main road. Military pattern driving. Alpha joined him at the window. A black SUV with government plates was making its way along the winding coastal road toward their location. Could be coincidence, Zira suggested without conviction. I don't believe in coincidences, Althea replied. Not after Damascus. Gather what we need. 2-minute evacuation protocol. They moved with practiced efficiency, collecting essential equipment and data storage devices. Vega watched in admiration as the two women executed what was clearly a well-rehearsed procedure. What about Tavon? Zira asked. If we're gone when he arrives, he'll follow standard evasion procedures. Alpha assured her. Shadow Vector was trained for this exact scenario. The SUV had stopped at the base of the access road leading to the safe house. Two figures emerged, studying the building through binoculars. Time's up, Vega announced. They're starting up the hill. Alpha made a quick decision. Secondary extraction route. Zira, trigger the countermeasures on my mark. Zira nodded, inputting a complex sequence into the main terminal. Ready? They moved quickly through the safe house to what appeared to be a solid rock wall. Alpha pressed a concealed panel, revealing a narrow passage carved into the cliff face. The helicopter, Vega questioned. Decoy, Alpha explained. There's a boat moored in a cove on the other side of this passage. Standard Shadow Vector protocol. Always have an exit they don't expect. As they entered the passage, Zira activated the sequence. Throughout the safe house, small charges detonated, destroying equipment and erasing all digital traces of their presence. Not enough to level the building that would attract too much attention, but sufficient to eliminate any useful intelligence. The narrow path wound through the cliff face before opening onto a small, sheltered cove, where a sleek boat was indeed moored. Within minutes they were underway, hugging the coastline as they put distance between themselves and the safe house. Where to now? Vega asked. Secondary rendezvous point? Althea replied. If Tavon finds the safe house compromised, he'll know where to go next. And if those men back their report our escape, let them, Zira said with grim satisfaction. Every move they make helps us map their network. That's how we'll eventually expose them. As the boat cut through the water, Alpha studied the horizon. For 10 years, she'd lived in shadows, hiding her identity and abilities. Now, forced into the open, she felt a strange sense of liberation. The mission wasn't over. It had merely entered a new phase. 3 months later, the USS Valiant returned to Naval Station Norfolk after an extended deployment. The massive carrier eased into its berth with practiced precision, tugboats guiding its enormous bulk to the dock. On the flight deck, crew members prepared for the homecoming ceremony. Families waiting eagerly on shore. Among the officials present for the carrier's return was Admiral Harrington, recently promoted to the Joint Chiefs of Staff following Admiral Garrison's unexpected retirement amid whispers of financial irregularities and classified investigations. As the first wave of sailors disembarked, a group of naval personnel formed an honor guard near the gangway. At their center stood Alpha Rhodes, no longer hiding behind the identity of Talia Merrick. She wore her proper uniform with restored rank insignia, standing tall and proud. Beside her stood Zira and Tavon Winters, both similarly restored to their rightful ranks. The absence of Finch Hawthorne was a sobering reminder of the cost their mission had extracted. His fate was confirmed during the investigation that had quietly rocked the highest levels of military intelligence over the past months. Captain Vega descended the gangway, the last to leave his ship as tradition dictated. When he reached the honor guard, he paused before Alpha. Major Rhodes, he said formally, the ship's company extends its gratitude for your service. Thank you, Captain, she replied. Though I believe you're addressing me incorrectly. Vega smiled. My apologies, Commander Rhodes. I'm still getting used to your promotion. Admiral Harrington approached carrying a small wooden box. The Secretary of the Navy wanted to be here himself, he said, but we thought you'd prefer something quieter. He opened the box to reveal the Navy Cross, an award for extraordinary heroism. Not just for saving Captain Vega's life, the Admiral continued, but for what you and your team did 10 years ago, and for what you endured afterward. As Althea accepted the medal, she allowed herself a moment of pride, not for the recognition, but for the vindication of her team and their mission. The investigation had exposed the weapons trafficking network without public scandal, quietly removing the corrupt officials while preserving the integrity of the institutions they had betrayed. Your actions exemplify the highest traditions of naval service, Admiral Harrington said formally before lowering his voice. Though they'll never appear in any official record. Some operations are better left in the shadows, sir, Alpha replied. When the formal ceremony concluded, Althea found herself standing with her reunited team members, watching as sailors reunited with their families on the dock. What happens now? Tavon asked. Back to civilian cover identities. That would be the prudent course, Zira noted. Despite the changes in command, there are still elements out there who know about Shadow Vector. Admiral Harrington approached their small group. Actually, I have a proposition for you all. The Joint Chiefs would like to discuss the reinstatement of Shadow Vector. Under your command, of course, Commander Rhodes. Alpha exchanged glances with her teammates. Officially this time? Semi-officially, the Admiral corrected. Some operations require a certain amount of deniability, as you well know, but with proper oversight and protocols, and safeguards to prevent what happened after Damascus, Althea added. Precisely. The new structure reports directly to a joint oversight committee. No single individual can issue termination orders or cover up inconvenient findings. The Admiral's expression was earnest. We need people like you. People with both the skills and the integrity to handle the most sensitive operations. Alpha looked at her assembled team members, each with their own story of hiding in plain sight, waiting for this moment of redemption. What do you think? She asked them. Zira smiled. I was getting tired of teaching high school mathematics anyway. My career as a commercial pilot was becoming tedious. Tavon agreed. Alpha turned back to the Admiral. It seems we have a consensus, sir, though we'll want to review those oversight protocols thoroughly. I'd expect nothing less, Harrington replied. Welcome back, Shadow Vector. As they walked away from the dock, Captain Vega fell into step beside Alpha. So, back to the shadows. Some people work best there, she replied. Where we can see without being seen, watching over those who don't even know they need protection. Alpha nodded, her gaze drifting to the carrier that had been her home for 5 years. Sir, she said to Admiral Harrington, who walked ahead with the others, we never stop being shadow vectors. The Admiral glanced back with understanding. I know, Commander. That's precisely why we need you. As they walked toward the waiting vehicles, Althea felt the weight of her true identity settle comfortably on her shoulders for the first time in a decade. The shadow had become substantial again. The vector had found its direction. And somewhere in the world, people who thought themselves beyond accountability were about to discover that no secret stays hidden forever when Shadow Vector is on the mission. At Graceful Valor Stories, we bring you tales of valor and resilience. If this story inspired you, show your support with a like. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories to never miss a story of courage and hidden strength that shapes our world.